David wanted to walk with God. He wanted God to be with him in the bad times. He wanted God to be with him in the good times. He wanted God as a part of all of his life. So, first question, what is that one thing? If God were to say, I'll give that to you, what would you ask for? It could be, God, can I be a part of a friend or a loved one accepting Christ? Can I be used by you that way? Maybe it's a marriage. Maybe your marriage needs healing. But be prepared, because it may not be so much about God changing your wife. It may be about God changing your heart. Maybe it's just, as for me, maybe it's finally slowing down. Because you guys know I'm all very hyper. I'm constantly going and doing things. And this year, I just want to slow down. And I want to spend more time with God. So what would be that one thing? Question number 2. When it comes to your relationship with God, what one thing do you lack? Or what is that one thing that is missing in your life? What is that one thing that keeps you from totally following Jesus? In Mark 10:21 through 22, Jesus tells the story about the rich young ruler who comes to him and says, how do I get eternal life? And Jesus goes on to tell him that you need to do the commandments, and he lists out the commandments in the Bible. And the rich young man says, I've kept all of those since I was young. And I think the next couple verses are telling, because Jesus looks at him and he loved him. And he said, one thing you lack. Sell all your possessions, give them to the poor, follow me. And the saddest part is that the man dropped his head and walked away. What's that one thing in your life that you're holding on to? Maybe it is material possessions. Maybe you need to say, I need to sell this. I don't care if I take a loss. I need to get rid of this thing out of my life so that I can fully follow him, because it's holding me down. Maybe it's about tithing. Maybe it's letting go of the grips of that money, the hold that it has on your life. Maybe it's having yourself be held out to be accountable to someone. Saying, okay, I'm going to pick you. I want you to hold me accountable. And pick one person, and I'm going to share all of my crap with you. What is that one thing? Question number 3. What one thing do you need to let go of? What one thing are you holding on from your past that you need to let go of? In Philippians 3:13 through 14, Paul talks and he says, brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on to the high calling that God has in my life. And I think, what did Paul have to let go of? Was it the fact that he was standing there holding the garments while they stoned Stephen? Was it the fact that he had killed and persecuted the Christians? Was it the fact that he needed to forgive or let go of the fact that people had tried to stone him, beat him with rods, tried to kill him, and left him for dead many times? Paul says, forgetting all of those things, I'm letting go. What's that one thing that you need to let go of? Last question. What one promise from God do you need to claim for this new year? And I've given a list of promises that are on the paper that'll be passed around. David in Psalm 62 says, one thing God has spoken, two things have I heard. That you, O God, are strong, that you, O Lord, are loving. Surely you will reward each person according to what he has done. It goes on in Psalms 56 to say, but this one thing I know, that God is for me. So, this is a series of questions for that one thing. The answer could be the same for several of the questions for you. But my desire for you today is that God will use this one thing, that he will take, instead of doing something like we always do at the beginning of the year, saying, I'm going to make New Year's resolutions, God, can you birth one thing in me for this new year that will change me, that will change the way I look at you, that will change me toward everyone else? God, what is that one thing? So, there are the questions. And we're going to finish this up at the end. So, 1, 2, 3, go. All right. I hope the discussion is just that first step. That's that one, defining that one thing. But I want us to take it one step further. I want to put some action to what we've just talked about. And you know, when Woody told the story on Sunday as he closed out the service, that so resonated with me. And it just hit me, and I kept picturing it in my mind. And he was talking about the land rush, when they'd open up new land out in the West. And people would be notified. And I read on the internet, I read the story behind that. It said people would cram into train cars and ride all the way out west for this one chance, this one thing, this one new opportunity. A chance to start life over, a chance to start life fresh, a chance to come in and stake their claims. And as they came into the town, there was a date and there was a time set, and they'd all line up, and some with horses, some with buggies, some were just on foot. And they would, at the sound of the gun would go off, and they would run. And can you imagine the excitement? Can you imagine the anticipation, never having had anything, and having come halfway across the country for just an opportunity, for just a chance to have something that you could call your own, something that forever would change your life, some place where you could build a family, some place for your kids to grow up. And so, as we start this new year, we talked about the stakes. And so, at each table, there's a stake. And there are pins at the table, and this is what I want you to do. You know, Woody challenged you guys to put that stake in the ground. All right, what are you going to do? What one thing, God, this year are you going to do in me? Am I going to allow? It ties back to the questions that we already talked about. For me, I still struggle with condemnation, with living under the guilt of my past. And yet I know that God has changed me, and he wants to use my past to help people. But sometimes that yuck just flies up, and it takes me to such a bad place. But then I realize God works everything for good. And he wants to use my past to help somebody else.